Welcome to another episode of The Read Pile. A few weeks back, there was a commenter that left a comment about... there was a misunderstanding, misconstruing what I was saying. I've said this repeatedly on this channel in a variety of videos, but I can't stand comic writing past really a certain point. And that point is flexible depending on who's writing, because some are more skilled than others. But it's really sort of prior to, I'm going to say, the late 90s. I largely can't stand a style of writing that was pervasive before the late 90s. And there are plenty of things that I was reading in the early to mid 90s that I still have a certain nostalgia for, that I can step back in time and reread that stuff and still enjoy it. But stuff that I hadn't read originally, I now find difficult to get through. And I sort of found an example, a recent example of that, when I was trying to read Larry Hama's G.I. Joe Real American Hero. Just restarted at 301, I believe. So I bought a couple of issues of that, and there were certain... 301 was great. And then 302 and 303, I think, is where I stopped. I'm like, I'm enjoying this last, but 301 is great. There's a particular moment that springs to mind. It's Snake Eyes and Scarlet in bed together. It's extremely remote. They're living together in the wilderness, and they're still calling each other by code names. And I'm just like, no. I have, admittedly, a very fragile suspension of disbelief. And when that's broken, I have problems. I have adverse reactions. I'm making a hand gesture not intentionally towards this. I just talk a lot with my hands. But it's one of the reasons I think Dan and I have very different opinions on many movies, is my suspension of disbelief and versus his own. And so this commenter was saying that I'd never read Bone or Preacher or Corto Maltese because I just hadn't read anything prior to a certain point. That's not true. If they'd seen any of my other videos, whatever. So he was correct that I never actually read Corto Maltese. I did buy this many years ago. I tried to find a receipt. I couldn't find anything in Gmail, so I don't know where I picked this up. This is a second print from 2015. I don't think I've owned it for that long, but IDW was putting out, and there's a list here at the back of the other collections. There's a bit about Pratt as well, but so all of this is going on. This is the only one that I own, and it probably will be the only one that I own. Because. So this was done in 1970. He started. There's plenty of... so here's some information. There's plenty of quotes and praise here in the back. There's this here at the back about Pratt, about his works, and there's a bit here in the beginning as well, in addition to, maps. So all of that, right? I can recognize the craft. I can recognize that this was done in the 70s, that at the time he was decades ahead of what other people were doing in comics. However, I think I'm just coming at this too late. It's sort of like, I watched a video recently of all of other live-action and animated uses of the Akira slide, right? And there were like 30 or 40 in this clip that I saw. And so, like, there are certain, I'll call events, right? If you take The Shining, elements of The Shining have been reused by other media for decades, right? So you've got creepy kids in a hallway, you've got blood coming out of elevators, you've got an axe and face coming through a door, you've got all of these elements that have been reused elsewhere. And if you see all of that before watching The Shining for the first time, when you watch The Shining for the first time, it hits less. It's less of an impact because you've seen everything else that came later that was influenced by the source material. This is sort of I'm going to say the same way. So I've read other stuff that has been influenced by Corto Maltese, and so while reading this for the first time, it just doesn't hit quite the same way. And as I said, I recognize the craft, the skill that has gone into this. It's just my personal taste at the time. I didn't enjoy it as much as I think I would have if I had come at this sooner. If I had found, let's say, I did a video some time ago where I was talking about discovering anime, manga, before really getting into European comics, and if that had been reversed, I think I'd have a very different opinion. If I'd discovered, say, European comics before I'd found Japanese, I would have different opinions now. My comic reading life would have taken a different fork. So, it's good. It's good. I enjoyed it. I'm curious about the character of Corto Maltese. I don't know if I will read any more of this. However, I feel like this might be one of the instances where I actually buy the series digitally so that I don't have to dedicate space on a shelf, but I could read it. And because there's a lot of... I've talked around the book quite a lot, but I haven't talked about the book much at all, right? So there's a captain. This guy here, he is largely on islands and territory in South America, in the Caribbean. He travels quite a bit. There's a level of mystery, of intrigue as far as his history. There's I'm going to say largely it's an adventure series. It's a series of adventures. There is some mystery. There's some politics involved. So here's some explosions. There's a gunfight going on. There's also a dash of the supernatural, which I found curious. I wasn't expecting that, but there are characters. There are even boats that come in and out of his life. But his personal history, at least as told here, is pretty vague. It's left mysterious. There are hints of stuff happening in the future, and again, there's some supernatural elements. So all of that is intriguing. It's just I don't know if I want to. When I was in college, I actually enjoyed my gen eds more than my area of study. And I learned a lot in business, but every time I cracked open the business textbook, I fell asleep within 5 minutes. It was not great. And this book, similarly, was putting me to sleep. And that's not great. Every time I'd read for like 15 minutes, I'd get very tired. And it's just not for me. I recognize that it's good. It will be for plenty of other people. It's just not for me, personally. I think that's all I have to say about this, and I probably going to get some comments on this as well. It's just, I don't appreciate it as much as certainly all of these other people do. But they came to it in prior decades, I'm going to say. For now, this will be the only Corto Maltese that I read. However, I remain curious enough that I might revisit it in the future. It's just I don't think I will be buying any more physical copies, and this one will actually be leaving the house. So that's where I'm at. I have the camera pulled back once again. This is an oversized, so there's a standard modern comic. It is oversized. This is, I believe, the original format, how it was intended to be read, and I found it not to be for me.